I was interested in the idea of reading as an art, as something that people do with their imagination, that everyone does differently. And therefore, a sort of community of readers, which obviously happens in book clubs, happens in libraries, but a lot of people read alone. And obviously you read alone mainly in silence. And I just wanted to sort of register an idea of that you could share that, and that you could find a meeting point for people who really read deliberately and seriously, but maybe one more thing would be that they would read in a group, or that they would connect to a group, and that we would be able to provide that.
My favourite part of the evening was just to be amongst so many people who are also interested in books and literature.
I think the blog is a great new literary form. I hadn't honestly ever thought about it before, but it is where anything that occurs to you that you think might be of interest to even one person, you write down and see if you can make a form out of it. So it could take a diary form of just something that occurred to you and you were just musing about it. It could also be a memory. It could also be, for example, Seamus Heaney's collected letters came out. And so when I was reading it myself, I was taking notes, just so that for the future, if I was looking for something, I'd be able to find it. And then I realized actually what I was doing was I was building up my blog. And the blog is not a review of the book, but it's a set of notes and musings on various aspects of Heaney's life that emerge in the book. So I could do that, and I could put it up on my blog, not a book review, not an essay, not an article, a new literary form called a blog. I think that the idea of a creative writing course in a university is reasonably new. No one is really sure what the result of it will be. Will it produce a massive number of writers? But in any case, it's producing a great number of people who are fascinated by literature and are trying out various forms. And honestly, you could have no influence on anyone. You could wander in and tell them the most important things about writing, but it would be a morning when no one is listening. You know, you're never sure with students, you never can judge. And one thing you could say could matter to one student in a really strange way. So basically what you do is you go in. I went in so far this year, I went into Trinity, I went into University College Cork, and you know, everyone's very receptive. There are a lot of questions, but you realize out of this conversation, which maybe lasts 2 hours, one thing only might become important, but you don't know what it is. So basically what you do is you tell a story. I mean, you talk about how you started, various things you did, things you forgot to do, things you neglected to do, but how it began for you, and telling that in ways that might offer them a way to, you know, maybe finish a book. The idea is that you would get a single book, and that it might be a new book, and that it might be a young writer, and it might be someone that people have heard of, and or not. And you would use the libraries, because it's essential to have that partnership, that the libraries are not just there, you know, in a way for people to borrow books from anymore. That sort of thing is over. They're actually living spaces in towns, and they make an enormous difference. And the librarians themselves become active forces, not just in literacy, and not just in community building, but in that whole idea of the reading as an art.
I thought tonight's event was fabulous. I thought there was a great attendance, and the feedback and questions asked by the group was evident that they read the book and thoroughly enjoyed it. I think literature and reading are very important for all aspects of growth, imagination, and for young and old. It brings us together, it connects us, and it gives us the chance to kind of escape and go into worlds maybe that we've never delved into before.
No one wants to read a book and be the only person ever to read it. If you read a book you like, you think you want to give it to someone. So it's that sense, the spirit of that is there at the center of this. And therefore, the writer has the idea that you come into a space in which everyone has already read your book, which usually doesn't happen. If you're on a book tour or something. So, and you're not promoting your book in the sense that there are no sales going on. This is a different sort of thing. And the idea then is that it will be, first of all, for that live audience, and then it will be filmed, and then it will be on various medias, and it will be free, so anybody can come into it at any time. And people are funny, they say, I started to watch all of them. And of course, over a 3-year period as Laureate, you end up with a sort of an archive, which of course in the future will look interesting. But for the moment, now is enough. The thing to do is to move into places, and of course you ask the libraries to do the choosing. So you don't just arrive, you know. So there is all that idea of partnership. For example, we went to Dean's Grange with Wendy Erskine. You know, and again, that's a book that some people who have read really admire. But I think it's a book that needs a bigger and deserves a bigger audience. And also for her to describe that Belfast of hers, the whole new perspective she's taking on that, I think required a sort of, where you would just simply, my job sometimes is just stop asking questions and let the author talk. And just see in that conversation if something new could emerge or some explanation.
My favourite part was the added insights from Colm Tóibín with his wonderful experience, and Wendy giving great background to, yes, that's how I wanted to portray that character, and so that's what I found was really interesting. And
so you move from Wendy Erskine to John Banville. I think it is his 15th novel in Donabate. And you know, again, it was fascinating to hear him talking about the things in this book that seem to sum up things that are in the other books. And then there was a lovely moment where he said, oh, but there are no twins. There are twins in all my books. I said, no, there are, because I had found twins on a certain page. But in other words, once, it doesn't matter about the age, the number of books. You're still dealing with the idea that the writer is important only if the book is read. And this means that the reader's engagement with the book is not only active but creative.
When you're reading the Singularities, you're aware that there's a lot of references in the book that you're not going to get, and you will revisit it. And John mentioned that this is a book for the future. So reading it in the future, looking back at this time, I think it'll stand. I think it's his greatest book. And I know I didn't get all of the references, and I will revisit it again, and it'll keep people, and I'm sure scholars, busy for a long time to come.
But I suppose the real one, the one that will never leave your mind, is Going to Balahi, which is the home place, which is the beautiful building created in the place where Seamus Heaney was born as an auditorium and a venue. And having a dream of that there would be a triangle, that I would read poems about the underworld by various poets, you know, going back to Ovid and going up to Nuala Gol. And over there in one corner, there would be Cathy Belton, whose job would be to read the poems. And she would do so beautifully. You know, in other words, that she would know for each poem what tone to take. And then the other corner is empty. I mean, in the dream, the other corner is empty. Who's in the other corner? And so Martin Hayes comes into the other corner. And he changes the evening because me and Cathy can do the words. And suddenly the words get lifted because every time Cathy stops reading a poem, Martin's going to do, and we don't know each time what he's going to do. We didn't rehearse it. And he's improvising sometimes. And there's a live audience, and it's obviously packed, and it's going to go, you know, out into the world on various other media. But the moment where I'm, say, talking about poems of the underworld, Orpheus, Eurydice, and I stop, and Martin does something unexpected, and just lifts the evening, and then the same thing happens when Cathy reads a poem. So that was just amazing.